Hello YouTube, this is Hunter Surge here with some Cardfight Vanguard news. As I said last week, we're doing these just at the end of the week now. After all the cards of the day are done, after both streams are done, so we could just go over everything at once. It's just easier for me now that I'm doing illustrious content again. So this week we had the reveal of the Draconic Overlord start deck and Blangdmire Fantome, both of which were pretty exciting. So let's get right into it. There's a lot to talk about design-wise. Before we get into the stream reveals, we're going to run through the cards of the day real quick. We finished the cycle of the Perfect card, so we got this new Battle Siren Perfect card for Stoicha. Looks very nice. And we've got this grade 1. I believe we saw one of the cards of this cycle before. No, this might be the first one. But it's when at the end of the battle that it boosted, if it hit, and you played a normal order this turn, Soul Blast 1 and retire this unit. As far as like a low rarity cycle version of like Painkiller and Co goes, this isn't too bad. I could as we're gonna go through, we're gonna see that this is a cycle that basically every nation is getting. So it is something that I could see being played somewhere in some deck that would want something like this to fill deck slots and does play normal orders every turn. I wouldn't be shocked to see it pop up somewhere. Needing to hit is not fantastic, but as far as a low rarity cycle of this type of card, it's not too bad. Yeah, okay. Next up, we have the lyrical new Perfect card. This is a ghost. Then we've got the lyrical version of that cycle. That on hit, if you play a normal order this turn, Soul Blast 1, retire it, draw a card. And then we've also got this Energy Blast 5 cycle that we saw before for lyrical. So for each card in your damage, it reduces the cost by Energy Blast 1, and you pay EV5 to give it plus 10k. As I said before, I think if this was plus 15k, it would be much more worth considering. But plus 10k is just not enough. Just not enough power for what you're paying for it. Even if it eventually becomes free, because most archetypes have a plus 10k attacker that is free. So for the next card of the day, we have the Dragon Empire version of that on hit, kill itself, draw a card. And then non-cycle. So this is a grade 2 Dino Dragon. When this unit gets retired for the cost of your grade 3 or greater Vanguard's ability, Energy Blast 3, add this back to your hand. I believe all of the relevant decks have something of this variety that is just better costed, has additional effects or anything like that. For Dark States, again, this grade 1 cycle, and this grade 3 on attack, it gets plus 5k at the end of the battle. If the attack did not hit, put this into soul. Really, really bad. Nowhere near enough power to be worthwhile. Just not good at all. And then the last cards of the day, some archetype-specific support. We have some Ostrom support, quick start decks. So double rare, grade 2. When your grade 3 or greater Ostrom Vanguard is placed and you do not have a rear guard with this name, you Soul Blast 1, call it back. And then during your turn, if you have a grade 3 or greater Ostrom, it gets power plus 5k. If you Persona Road this turn, it gets an additional plus 10k. So this is pretty good. This is a pretty good attacker. Brings itself back. On Persona Ride, it's getting plus 25 total to swing for 35 solo, which is very good numbers. Extremely good numbers. Then we have the grade 1 of the Brent Gate of that grade 1 cycle. And this grade 1 is just a plus 5k power, plus 5k shield if you have an Ostrom Vanguard. Yeah, these cards almost never amount to anything. So not really worth talking about. The grade 2 is pretty solid though. Alright, let us get into the actual news. So, starting with the Tuesday stream, there is some stuff about the Kagetsu manga. Turns out that it's actually Nao's never mentioned before younger sister. And not Nao herself. Kind of lame, not gonna lie. And then let's get into Blangdmire. So let's start at the bottom of the right line. So one thing to note here is Freedom Duo's translation doesn't make note of it. but you can see right here at the race line, there are actually 2 races on each of these cards, and the second race is Fantome. There's a bunch of cards in this Fantome support that references the race, and just all the cards have it. So like there's going to be some cards that care about your Vanguard being a Fantome, and those are actually live before you get to the grade 3 that has Fantome in the name, because the entire ride line has Fantome in its race. Alright. So normal grade 0, just when you rode upon it, when you go second, you draw an additional card. And grade 1, which rode upon by the grade 2, you get to search your deck for a Crimson Moon and throw it into the Soul, which isn't ideal, but it's a direct search, so it's nice to have. The grade 2 is when it's rode upon by Blangdmire. You Soul Blast 1, look at top 3, add 1 to your hand, and you either discard the rest or you shuffle them back into the deck. Unfortunately, you can't like choose to discard one of the remaining cards and shuffle the other back. That would be very nice, but it's still a very high quality ride line effect. Even if it's only top 3, being able to just grab any of those cards is super, super good, especially for like a very plentiful resource, generally speaking, in Soul. Like not too taxing of a resource there. Then we have the Blangdmire himself. Let's get up to him. There he is. Blangdmire Fantome. Once per turn, you can Counterblast 1, bind 4 from drop. During this turn, this unit gets continuous Vanguard. All your units in your front row get power plus 5k. If there are 10 or more face up in your bind zone, it gives another plus 5k. And if there are 13 or more, it's going to be additional plus 5k. And on attack, you choose and call 1 face-up card from your bind zone onto a rearguard circle. Then Fantome skill. Once per turn, you Energy Blast 3 and bind a total of 2 or more and up to 4 Crimson Moons from your hand or soul. We're going to talk about that specific wording in a bit, but activate all of the following according to the amount of Crimson Moon cards in your bind zone. If it's 2 or more, you choose and call up to 1 from drop onto rear. 4 or more. During this turn, this unit gets critical plus 1, and then if you Persona Road, you choose and heal 1 from your damage zone. Healing is very, very scarce in Vanguard in general, and in particular D-Series. They haven't really touched the damage manipulation stuff ever. So it's cool to see this, and like, yeah, and that's like a once per game thing. It makes sense for it to be that way. Like this card a lot, we'll get into it a bit more. Let's talk about the Crimson Moons. Where are they? Here they are. Okay, so there's 2 Crimson Moons. There's a double rare and a rare. They have the effect that the rare has the effect that it's treated as the first one at all times. So you cannot put them in the same deck. You cannot put more than 4 in combination in the same deck. However, the fact that Blangdmire Fantome has the 2 or more, but up to 4 in its Fantome skill cost really makes me suspect that we'll get a different Crimson Moon in DZ14 or maybe some other later set. Like, it really seems to leave open that possibility, and if we do get that, then Blangdmire Fantome becomes a lot stronger, because you can obviously heal more times in the game, and healing is extremely strong. But what do these do? So they're grade 1 normal orders that you can only play if your Vanguard is a Fantome race. You look at the top 5 from your deck, reveal up to 1. If no card was revealed, shuffle the deck, draw 1. If you revealed a card, you activate one of the following and shuffle your deck. If the grade of the card revealed is equal or lower than your Vanguard, you call it onto rearguard circle. And if it was a Crimson Moon card, you add it to your hand. Now, this draw 1, if you fail the search part, is exclusive to the double rare version. The rare version does not have that. That's literally the only difference between the cards. So, like, if you have to go budget and get the rare one, it's not going to be that big of a deal. It will not come up most of the time. So very happy with that design-wise, though I really think you could have just, like, made the actual card rare, and just done that, not printed this extra one. I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. And then they have these other effects. Continuous, you can only bind this card for the cost of your Fantome skill. It cannot be chosen or moved to other areas by the ability of any card when it's in the bind zone. And if it's in your damage zone, you can just drop it and put the top card of your deck into the damage zone. Very nice. These sorts of like decks are like always reliant on seeing like every copy of a specific order. Always have really big issues with damaging them. So it's very nice that they just built into the cards. Hey, if it gets damaged, it gets itself out. It's not going to be a problem. Very nice. Appreciate it a lot. So let's talk about Blangdmire grade 3 again. So for these conditions, so you're going to have plus 5k on the first turn, of course. You're going to have 6 bound, and then you're going to go down to 5 when you call. Then on the second turn, you'll have the plus 10k ideally, because you'll bind 2 Crimson Moons again, putting you up to it'll put you up to 11, and then you'll go down to 10, so you'll keep the threshold after calling one out of bind. And then on the next turn, after going down to 10, you'll bind 4 more from your drop, and you'll be at 14, and even when you call one out of bind on attack, you'll still be at 13. So thresholds work very nicely, assuming you see all 4 of your Crimson Moons by turn 4, which, you know, might not always happen, because as we're going to get into, there aren't really plentiful direct searches. It's a lot of top X checks, and you're pretty likely to find them, but you're not, like, guaranteed. So you could have some really bad games with this deck, because it really needs to see all the Crimson Moons. That doesn't seem to be universal with the Fantomes. At this point, the 3rd episode has aired. I've seen it, and it looks like the Zorga Fantome is a lot less reliant on seeing all the copies of its Crimson Moon. So this isn't going to be a universal thing, but it makes sense for it to be that way for Blangdmire, considering how powerful healing is. And of course, if we get another Crimson Moon that we can use alongside the current one, in a future set, then these problems become way less prevalent. All right. So let's talk about the rest. So there are actually 3 triple rares being given to the Fantomes, assumingly across the board, because there is also a cycler for the Fantomes. I imagine that this is an indicator that even after the season is over, they'll probably continue to do more Fantome decks, like they have with the masks, probably in the non-anime sets. So that'll be cool. And these cyclers will be relevant to all of them. They are nation swaps of the original draw cyclers from what, DBT 10 or something, DBT 09, somewhere around there. So this is Kolgaflan, who's originally Dragon Empire and is now in Keter. When you discard him to ride from ride deck, and you have a Fantome Vanguard, you Soul Blast 1, Energy Blast 3 to search your deck for a Crimson Moon and add to your hand. And when it's placed on Guardian Circle from hand and you have a Fantome Vanguard, you Counterblast 1 or Energy Blast 3 to draw a card. So, like, they have solid enough flexibility, which is nice. They turn to gun cyclers once you've already ridden up all the way. But this is the only direct search for Crimson Moon outside of the Grade 1 ride line that Blangdmire has in his entire deck. And it turns off when you ride up to Grade 3. Which, I'll be honest, that really sucks. I think they really should have made the search able to be activated by calling them as well. It's really unfortunate that they are this way, because like they kind of like really ask you to like max them out so that you can maximize consistency of actually finding your Crimson Moons. But I don't really want to do that. Like, it's not the best cyclers we've ever gotten, but by the nature of the Crimson Moon is just like a really good normal order, especially for enabling any stuff that wants you to use a normal order. And like, yeah, these cyclers are still plenty good, and they're definitely going to be played, but they're definitely less good than they could be for enabling what these decks want to be doing. Then our other triple rare is Bad Act. So this is a Grade 1 in the bind zone during your battle phase when your rearguard enters from the bind zone. If you have a Fantome Vanguard and you do not have a rear that shares the same name as this card, You bind a card with a different name as this card from your drop, so your count is not decreasing. And then you call this card onto a rearguard circle in your back row. So it effectively acts as a restanding booster for the sake of your multi-attack, which is always super, super nice. I talk all the time about how much I like these cards. They like help out your numbers so much to just be able to commit your booster to your first attack and still have a booster for your second. Yeah. Uh, then when it enters rearguard circle, other than the battle phase, and you have a Fantome Vanguard. So when you play it just normally, you look the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 card with Blangdmire's name or a Crimson Moon card, add to your hand and shuffle your deck. So this helps you find your Crimson Moons and your Persona Rides. Very nice. Does that come for completely free. And then on top of that, at the end of the battle, it boosted. If there are, if there are any Crimson Moon cards in your bind zone, if you have not countercharged this turn, you retire it to countercharge 1. Where it is now in your drop zone, where you're going to be able to bind it with Blangdmire's effect next turn, and have it available to be called out as a restanding booster again. Insane card. Completely stacked. I can't believe how good this card is. This card is absolutely absurd. Really good. Really, really good. Then we have Mr. Samug. He's back. He's a grade 2 double rare. When it's placed on rearguard circle, and your opponent's Vanguard is grade 2 or above. So you cannot use it turn 2 if you're going first, but you can if you're going second. You may reveal a grade 3 or greater Blangdmire from your ride deck. If you're revealed, or you have a grade 3 or greater Blangdmire Vanguard, you counterblast 1, look at 2 cards from the top of your deck, add 1 to hand, and put the rest at the bottom of your deck or into your soul. Very good. Very, very strong. Then when this attacks and you have a grade 3 or greater Blangdmire Vanguard, during this turn, this card gets power plus 5k. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and this was called by the effect of your Vanguard during the battle phase, it gets plus 10k instead. And if it got plus 10k, you can Energy Blast 3 to also give it critical plus 1. Notably, unlike Dark State Samug, this critical is for the turn. Because it's tacked on to this also for the turn power gain effect, which means that it actually does play well with Red OT in a way that Dark State Samug was always awkward with, because if you Red OT'd Dark State Samug, you had to double dip on its energy, and you didn't always have that energy, especially if you went for a double Zamug line to ensure all of your attacks had critical. So it became really, really expensive. But this plays really well with Red OT because it lasts for the entire turn. Very, very nice. Very, very good card. Very, very nice. Then we have another restanding booster, by the way. This is a double rare, grade 1, ad Vole. When it's placed on rearguard from hand, you may reveal Blangdmire from your ride deck. If you did, or you have a grade 3 or greater Blangdmire Vanguard, you look top 5, discard any card from among them, and shuffle the rest. Really good. And then in back row, when your other unit gets called onto a rearguard circle in the same column as this unit, and you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Blangdmire in its name, you soul blast 1 and stand it. So it's another restanding booster. There is reason to play this in addition to the one we already have. We'll get into that in a moment. Grade 3. When this unit attacks and there are cards in your bind zone, any at all, it gets power plus 5k, and then it gets bound at the end of the battle. If this unit was called onto rearguard circle by the ability of your grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Blangdmire's name, plus 10k. This is a way to accelerate your bind, but overall I don't think this card is worth running. Right, there's this grade 1. In the drop, when your card gets bound during your main phase and you have 10 or more in your bind zone, bind 1 from your hand, call this onto rearguard circle. I think the fact that you need 10 more in your bind already is what really kills this, because you can't use it to accelerate your bind, and you can't use it to help fill board on an earlier turn. So not a huge fan of this one, but it's alright. Actually, something this card does enable, only on turn 4 onwards, of course, but no, during your main phase. You can't use this to extend attacks. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yep. Okay. So that is it for the new cards. So something I will note is that Blangdmire actually plays really well with Carebrae. So like in the earlier turns, you're definitely going to go for Zamook because you want the crit pressure, and the crit pressure is better for like getting cards out of your opponent's hand, or at earlier stages in the game, and just pushing your opponent to 5 in general. Once your opponent is at high enough damage that isn't really doing anything, Carebrae can come into play. So like you can run like 1 or 2 Carebrae, just store it in your drop zone, and then bind it away for Blangdmire to pull out. And then because we have 2 restanding boosters, both Carebrae and whatever Carebrae calls is going to have a booster, is going to be able to have a booster behind it, which is really good. And like even in the worst case scenario where we have to call like a 5k trigger, assuming we've Persona Road and we're at least the 10 or more threshold, because that's the stage in the game our opponent should be at high enough damage that we're going for this kind of line. Then the trigger is going to have 10k from Persona Ride, so it's going to be 15. Then it's going to have 10k from Blangdmire's effect. It's going to be 25. Then it's going to have a booster for 33, and then if we're at 13 or more, it's going to have another 5 for 38. So 33 to 38 on Persona Ride turns for your worst case scenario is still really good numbers. That's still really, really good numbers. Good for pressuring your opponent with 5 attacks. Definitely good enough. And the fact it's really nice that you can go like, okay, I'm gonna bind my booster that calls itself back, my Zamoog, and my Carebrae going into this Persona Ride turn, and then based on what happens on the pre-Vanguard attacks, whether my opponent takes it to try and fish for damage triggers, etc., whatever, then when Blangdmire attacks, you get to make your decision at that point. Which is very nice. Gives the deck some really nice flexibility, and I think Carebrae has a really, really strong place in it. I think that Teachfall and Saragon naturally have a really good place in it, because like it's a top 5 call 1 order that's free. Really good card, just in general, and like going into Teachfall and all that is obviously very strong. Saragon is enabled by us playing normal orders. But in addition to that, very similar to decks I have used in the past, Vanguard and Reziel, after we spend Saragon, it's very easy for us to get back Saragon by just reviving it off of the effect of the Fantome skill. So that's very nice. And then the one last thing I wanted to note is that a hostage package lines up pretty well here because the calls from drop and bind have no restrictions. So we can freely just go, okay, I'm going to call back a PG into a non-removal matchup. I have a 1-1 lineup of the hostage package. I could have revived the grade 2 that gets out the set order. So like that feels like it lines up very, very well for the deck to utilize. Next week is going to be Barracuda, the new Storicha deck that Konami plays. Looked pretty cool in the episode today. I think it's a bit less cool, in my opinion, than Zorga. But we don't really know how many cards we're getting for this. But yeah, we're getting that next week. Then we have the Kai start deck. We'll get into the deck list later. No, it's over here. Here it is. Okay. So let's start at the bottom of the ride line. So the grade 0 is, where are you? Where are you? Oh, it's up here. Okay. Scissors, Swords, or Conroe. I can't remember if Overlord's old ride line had Conroe as its grade 0. It might have been Undo. Actually, I do think it was Undo. So I'm glad we're seeing Conroe here this time. But just the basic starter stuff. However, so Bar, our new Bar, grade 1 with the Kai icon. When this is placed on Vanguard Circle, you reveal grade 3 with Kai icon from Ride deck, and you call Lizard Soldier Conroe with Kai icon from Soul onto rear, and then for the entire fight, it gets the effect of retire it to search your deck for up to 1 grade 1 from deck, put it into your hand, and shuffle the deck. So it just gets Conroe's original Forerunner effect. Really cool, really good flavor, like it a lot. And then in the center back row, when your Vanguard with Kai icon stands, you can stand this unit. If you do, put this unit into Soul at the end of turn. So unfortunately, there's no way to call this out from Soul or drop in the deck. So you have to run additional copies, and then you'd have to replace it every time. And one of the grade 3 Vanguards, as we'll get into, is not actually a Vanguard restander. So like, no, there's only center back row. Yeah, yeah, there's only center back row. It's not like Flare Cosmore where it can restand as a booster for anything. Yeah, and so your Kayakon Vanguard that has to restand anyway. So like that doesn't work on multiple levels. So like this second effect isn't really relevant until we get like a way to call it out from soul or drop. But still, this Rhyline effect is obviously very, very strong. Because it just reads, okay, I get a guaranteed PG. And to non-removable matchups, I can hold this Conroe as a booster for a couple turns and make my numbers a bit better. Which is very, very nice. Then Nahalem, grade 2. When this is placed on Vanguard Circle, you look top 7 and add up to 1 non-sentinel unit with the Kai icon to hand. And if you place from hand during this turn, this unit gets power plus 5k. That effect's never going to happen, but it's part of the cool flavor stuff that they're doing with this deck. Then in the drop, when your grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Kai icon is placed, you activate one of the following. If you do not have a rear with the same name as this card, you call it onto rear. If you did, during this turn, your Vanguard and this unit get power plus 5k. So it's doing the OG Nahalem, the D-Series OG Nahalem thing of giving plus 5k to itself and your Vanguard, but it does it while being a Self-Reviver, which is much, much better. And then it also has the other option of binding it, and then you choose one of your Vanguard's auto abilities, and during this turn, the next time you pay the cost, you reduce the Carablast by 1. It's only auto, right? I think Vortex is an act, isn't it? So that doesn't actually work with Vortex. Let me double check that real quick. Yeah, that is an act, so it doesn't really work with that. That's unfortunate. Okay. But this is a very, very nice card. I think it's something that you actually want to run additional copies in main. Because the nature of it needing to be in drop means that you can never get that Self-Reviver on your turn 3. It's just not happening. It just can't happen effectively. And like you really want to have access to that. It's very strong. In addition, having multiple copies is very nice because if you have 2 in the drop and you ride a grade 3, you can activate both effects. You can get the self-reviving Nahalem, and you can get the bind for Counterblast reduction, which allows you to spend your Counterblast pretty freely on turn 2 for early game pushes. Very, very strong. And then we have the Dragonic Overlord himself. So this is a continuous effect we're going to see on the other grade 3 in the deck too. When you normal ride upon when you normal ride this on top of a grade 3 with Kai icon and a different name, it's a persona ride. It can be a persona ride if you choose it to. So in that way, the deck allows you to freely switch between the 2 grade 3 bosses the deck has, which is very good, very awesome that they did that. It really evokes how old Vanguard actually felt. Assumingly, IG will have the same thing going on. And I hope this is the sort of design that we see more of in the future, because it is a very good school of design. And having the ability to just print like a new alternative boss monster for an archetype is how old Vanguard avoided just printing a new archetype every single set. Then at the end of its battle, it can Counterblast 1, restand, it gets drive -1, and then if you Persona Road, you can throw a card from hand into soul, it gets drive +1, and all units in your front row get power plus 5k. So in many ways, it's just a better Dodie. It gives us plus 5k to the entire front row, and it gets the 2 attacks with 2 drives. Yeah, it's just really, really good. Really, really good card. Yeah, and it still plays. It can still work with the double persona. So having plus 25 to your front row is very, very strong. On the rear, it has a rear effect because like you have these 2 different boss cards. It's like, okay, let's also make sure, like, since you're gonna have like effectively 7 personas, well, let's give you ways of using them in other ways. So for Overlord, when it attacks a rear guard and you have a Vanguard with Kai icon, you can Energy Blast 3 and restand it. Um, very, very nice. It can give you some like extra board control. Doesn't have any extra power, so it's like not as good as it could be, especially in comparison to Vortex's rear effect, as we'll get to. But it's still quite good. Then we have Vortex. So it has the same continuous effect that it's a Persona ride when it rides on top of another grade 3 with Kai icon. You Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast a grade 3 with Kai icon to retire all of your opponent's front rows. Unfortunately, this Counterblast reduction doesn't actually work with Nahalem, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. And then when it attacks, it gets the effect that once per turn, when it attacks, choose one column, stand all your rear guards in that column, and then they get power plus 5k. And if you Persona Road this turn, you choose 2 instead. So effectively, by the nature of its cost, is almost always going to be that second mode where you're resanding both full columns, which is crazy. Giving them plus 10k and resanding both full columns is really, really strong. And gives it a very similar pressure to what Double Persona Overlord is going to be doing. On Vanguard or Rear, if you have a Vanguard with a Kai icon and your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or above, if during this turn your opponent's rear guard was retired or your Vanguard has attacked 2 or more times, this unit gets power plus 10k, so it's just a plus 10 attacker on rear, so it's 23, which is very good. Or on Vanguard, it's going to swing for 23 solo, 33 with Persona Ride, and with a boost, we're looking at like 41. And then on Guardian, if you have a high icon Vanguard, it's also shield plus 10k, so it's an actual shield. So really helps prevent it from being a dead draw. Super, super good card. Very, very good. Yeah, crazy, crazy good card. The one of reprint here was Kogaflan. That's neat. We already did the Shenri reprint, I guess. Not reprinting Halbei is really annoying. I get it because Halbei doesn't actually work with this deck at all. You don't have any discards during the battle phase. But like, and Overlord himself puts to soul. So it doesn't actually work at all. But all the same, it's like Halbei really needs a reprint. Like that card's way too expensive. But whatever. It is what it is. Then we have another grade 2, Berserk Dragon. So when you ride this from hand, this ability loses its cost. So like they played this into the grade 2s as well by doing a thing of like, okay, we have multiple grade 2s that are like worthwhile enough to ride. Nahalem is good enough that I don't think you're ever not going to ride the Nahalem. But all the same, this is still a nice thing to have, and I hope we see more of it in the future. Because like it might not pan out for this deck specifically because of how good Nahalem is, but it could pan out for a different deck in the future, and I would really like to see that. But basically, when it's placed on Vanguard or Rearguard, if you have a Kai Icon Vanguard, you Counterblast 1 or Soul Blast 2, very flexible cost, to do one of the following, which is you either draw a card or you retire an opponent's rear. Quite good. And then if your opponent's at grade 3 or greater, it gets, no, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, sorry, it gets power plus 5k. Then it has a continuous, during your turn, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Kai icon, it gets power plus 5k, and then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, it's plus 10k instead, which results in a total of plus 15k on Berserk, which is a magic number that I really look for very frequently, because a card that's getting plus 15k independently is hitting 33 with any booster. Very, very good. Then we have Wyvern Strike Tejas, very simple card. If you have a Vanguard with the Kai icon, it gets power plus 5k and shield plus 5k. It's a 15k attacker in the early game, 10k shield, pretty solid. And when it attacks a rear, it battles all rears in that column, which is also pretty cool. Yeah, just solid. Not sure if it's a card that'll end up making the cut, but it's a pretty solid card overall. And then we have Dragon Mount Gojo. When it's discard from hand during your right phase, you either call it to a rearguard circle at rest, or you Soul Blast one and call it to a rearguard circle standing. And then when it's placed on rearguard circle, you draw one, and if you do, you discard a card from your hand. A very nice thing about this is that very cute thing is that a lot of the ride cyclers are like they trigger if they're discard during the ride phase. Some of the more recent ones care specifically about being discard for your ride deck, but a bunch of them activate regardless if they were discard during the ride phase. So this can actually enable you to activate another cycler, which is pretty cool. That's actually pretty neat. I don't think it's that relevant ultimately because, like, if we're being realistic, that's not going to be better than holding the cycler for the next turn unless you are seeing 4 or more cyclers over the course of your write-up process. And we have to be running a lot of cyclers for that to be very likely. So I do not think it's good enough on that grounds. Looting effects aren't ultimately that strong in Vanguard, and it's not really doing much outside that. But it's a pretty good card. It's a solid enough card in the context of the ride deck, in the context of the star deck. Like, it's a good enough card, but it's one of the cards that you are most likely to just immediately take out and replace with something else. And then we have a Jiran. So when this is placed on rearguard circle, you counterblast 1, look at 5 from the top of your deck, and reveal a non-sentinel Kai Icon card, add to your hand, and if you got nothing, you countercharge 1. Very nice, especially because they actually gave us a new full set of triggers that all have the Kai Icon, and they even gave us 2 different crits, as well as a heal. So like the crits, you'll like effect crits don't mean anything, so you won't be. So you just run these, and that means effects like this and the Hollums on ride have a fallback option of adding a 15k shield by adding one of those triggers, which is pretty nice. It's always like a solid enough fallback option to have access to on these sorts of effects. And like there are enough good Kai Icon cards that you are going to be able to hit an 80% hit rate on this, no problem. So like this is just a really, really good card. If you're running Tejas, it becomes even better because when it boosts the Tejas during that battle, this unit gets power plus 5k, so it's a 13k booster. To Tejas already being a 15k itself, which is 28. And there's no opponent's grade restrictions or your grade restrictions on those power gains. So you can hit with a 28k column on your turn 2, which is insane, absolutely absurd, and is a pretty solid argument for running Tejas. I'm personally a bit more partial to like utilizing Scarlet Flame to run the Tifa, but this is a pretty good option as well. I'm not too upset about it as an option, to be honest. Because Jiran is like a really good card, helps you fill boards enough as is. So like you don't necessarily need the Tifa. And then we have Bari as our perfect guard. Has the Kai Icon, but none of the cards that add Kai Icon allow us to add this, so it doesn't really matter. Drake Vita reprint, of course. Monica has the draw. And then Forbidal Surrogate as the Regalis piece. Like, it makes enough sense. You have 2 different grade 3s that have rear guard effects. But you definitely replace this Regalis piece as soon as possible. It's definitely not the Regalis piece you should be running. But a Forbidal reprint is definitely appreciated. For sure, a Forbidal reprint is appreciated. Because it is quite a good Regalis piece in the right deck. And yeah, that is it for the Kai deck. This is quite good. The deck list is, here's the deck list. That 55 card plus generator didn't actually pan out. What cards are below 4 copies? It's Monica, Congleflan, of course, and then Bar. I don't see you ever maxing out Bar. So that is the correct choice. And this is a pretty solid starter deck, all things considered. I think Flam is a pretty strong addition to this because the double persona is still a very good option to have access to. But it's very out the box good. Like you'll want to add effect fronts, of course, maybe some effect heals. You'll want to add a different Regalis piece. Um, but other than that, like the deck is like very very competent. Like you'll want to take out like the Gojos for like a Shenri, for a playset of Shenris. You'd want to remove the bars and the Kolgaflan for the Dino Dragon Cycler that's coming out in DZ11, the one that calls itself when you discard it and is a booster from the back and has 10k shield and can intercept from the back as well. That card's just like the Cycler to go for here. But like you make those two changes and you make those very few changes and you have a extremely competent deck. You don't even necessarily need the Scarlet Flam. So like, yeah, this is a very competent starter deck. Very good introductory product that I'm very happy with from that front. And like the switching grade 3s thing is very exciting. Some testing has revealed that like it might not be as much of a thing in this deck, but like it's introducing the concept. Aichi will probably also do the same thing, so maybe Aichi will make better use of it. And like it's generally a thing I want to see a lot more decks doing. I would really like to see it become like a universal arc mechanic of within these certain parameters you can Persona Ride into different units, because Persona Ride is really what's preventing us from having alternative boss cards like we would always have in previous eras of Vanguard. And as seen with this deck, when you have that, Bushiroad is much more encouraged to have some kind of rearguard effect on these boss cards, so that you're encouraged to still run, like, so that you don't feel too bad about drawing into multiples, like, and it just ends up making Persona Ride more consistent, more reliable, and that results in like a lot of my issue with Persona Ride, like it speeds up the game in ways I don't like. It forces you to run dead draws in ways I don't really like, but this deck doesn't really have that issue by the nature of the extra functionality they put on all the boss grade 3s. But one of my biggest problems with it is just its unreliability. If you miss Persona Ride and your opponent doesn't, you're cooked. It's a huge gap. And the less of that we have, the less of a problem I have with Persona Ride. The less the extra grade 3s are dead draws and have additional functionality, the less of a problem I have with Persona Ride. So there are a lot of design directions with this start deck that I like a lot, and I'm very excited for. And then we have the little preview thing for Zorga Fantome. A thing I want to note here is that on this slide, it says how many cards are being revealed for Zorga Fantome next week. And it's 14. It's 14 cards. We had a stint for a long while there where like wave ones of decks were feeling very incomplete, and it was very frustrating. But that era appears to have ended. Because I very much doubt that a 14 card wave 1 feels incomplete in any capacity. It doesn't look like this Zorga deck is a deck that has a bunch of set orders. So those are like it has like a token, and it seems to have a token order. And like everything else would have to be like real cards. And that's a lot of real cards. So I'm very excited about that. And like I'm liking what Zorga is doing from what we saw in the anime. So I'm excited to talk about that next week. Very, very excited to talk about that next week. We are already over 40 minutes, so I'm just gonna wrap it up here. This is Hunter Surge signing off.